Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time today. Can you just, I don't think people know you're the budgeting queen. So can you
Well,
tell me, like,
I don't know.
where did the passion start for you with budgeting? Like, how did this become a thing?
I really am a YNAB freak. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a budgeting queen, but
Which is you need a budget
yes,
now?
it's just
Is there an
just YNAB, YNAB. You
YNAB?
need a budget.
Okay.
It's just a program that I started using in like 2018, like right before we got married, and I'm like obsessed with it. I just think it's really cool tech, and I was a ambassador for them. There's like a program where we would get points for like posting things or whatever. My dogs are trying to jump on me. Stop. Go lay down. Go. Go lay down.
Puppies.
We would get points for posting things, and then we could trade those points in for gift cards. It was pretty cool, but they stopped doing that. But yeah, I've just been really obsessed with that program specifically, which is budgeting. And so then I'm just through that. I don't know. My dad, when I was like 14, was like, figure out what your monthly costs are, and he paid me an allowance and stopped. Like, I have been paying my way through life since I was 14 because my parents stopped doing that because they told me to start budgeting. So they didn't
Good
do
job,
that with
mom
my
and dad.
brother. I don't know why. So I've just been familiar with it for a long time. Yeah.
Okay. And the app just made it easier. Do you feel like there was a transformational point where you're like, oh, this is really important? Or you're like, this was just
Yeah.
something you've done and it was a really good tool to help you continue to do it?
Well, when we went to buy my car in 2018, we had like a payment in mind, and then like naturally it was more than that payment, and we were like, I don't know if we can do this, and then I like pulled out my app and was like, okay, well we're spending like $400 a month eating out. We could just do less of that and afford this car payment, and that was a very like pivotal, like, oh, this
Light
app
bulb
is
moment.
legit because I
Yeah.
can like make decisions that way.
Yeah. Because you knew where your money was going and how you could make a responsible adult decision. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think I should have looked this up. Aristotle has a quote that there's freedom in discipline. I think the misconception with budgeting is people are like, oh, it's going to be so hard. There's going to be so much control. Or I think anxiety. I think people have anxiety because money is a normal thing to be anxious about. There's
Yeah.
anxiety around like managing your finances, but it's
Yeah.
actually the opposite. Like you just said, when you know where your money's going and you actually have like you can track it, you go, no, we can actually make this decision because you're paying attention
Yeah.
instead of just hoping that you don't overdraw.
Yeah. That and people
Yeah.
I think are like they know they have bad spending habits, but then when they have to face it, it's a little bit like, ugh.
Oh, you mean I
like
have to be different to be better? Yeah, that's
like
so true.
let's see what my spending was last month. It was probably rough in terms of, well, just like where I was spending my money. Like, actually, last month wasn't bad. We only spent like $500 eating out in the whole month, which is pretty
That's good. I
low.
mean, inflation
Low
in
for
this
us.
economy, only spending
we've
$500.
we've had some months where it's like $1,200 for like what did we
Yeah,
even eat?
yeah, that's so
Lots of
good.
Taco Bell.
So, okay, so you need a budget. YNAB has been a good tool. Would you say, like, what would be a tip for somebody who doesn't know where to start with budgeting?
Well, I would find a tool that makes it simple for you, whether it is YNAB or Mint was a big one. Mint stopped doing
Right, they went away.
their thing. Um, Dave Ramsey has a budgeting app. Every dollar, I think that's his. I don't know. You could do an Excel spreadsheet. My advice with people, because I've helped a lot of people like start to use YNAB, and it's kind of hard because it goes by month, and people are like, "Well, I don't know what I'm spending. I don't know how much to budget." I always take like October because it's not a holiday. It's not the middle of summer. It's a pretty like neutral month, or it's not a holiday season, I guess.
Sure.
So in my spending, it's a pretty neutral month for typical spending, and so I say take your bank statements, see where all your money is being spent, and then you can see where you're spending your money and like how much you're spending on eating out or groceries or really, I feel like the
Right.
biggest
Yeah.
things for people are groceries, eating out, bills,
Right.
pet
Right.
expenses.
Just start. Yeah. You just got to start. Start
You
to
just
track.
have
So
to
that's a
look
good
at it.
piece of advice, right? Pick a month that doesn't have extraordinary expenses, right?
Yeah.
Or out of the norm. Right. Okay. So that
Yeah.
would probably be a good piece of advice as well. Is there are months that are different, right? I think the
Hmm.
misconception with budgeting is it creates this really strict framework, which it should be a framework, but that there's no wiggle room. So once I have a budget, then I can't have fun anymore.
Yeah.
Would you say that you've seen that or you've heard that?
Well, and I think also, and I will preface like a lot of my knowledge comes from YNAB things. So like,
Yeah, it's great.
it's a whole thing. They have like mottos and taglines and whatever. But
Shout out to YNAB.
not sponsored.
Not
But
sponsored.
they like one of their big things was like don't try and quit your habits cold turkey. So like if you want to be spending less money eating out, like don't just try to not spend money. Like don't try to just not eat out all month because that's unrealistic. Like give yourself $100.
Your budgeting isn't like a rigid framework that you can't go outside.
Right, right,
Right?
right.
People are like, well, if I have this thing and then I can't go spend money on whatever, right? Because I've built
Yeah.
this budget. Like budgets are restrictive. And so you were saying that's a great piece of advice of like, start with a month that is pretty flatline and then understand months will be different. But you
Yeah.
have kind of your baseline and then start small. I think starting small is a great tip. That's perfect.
Yeah. And then also like another way to view it is like an envelope system. So like I don't do the envelope system, which is you have $1,000 of income and you have all these envelopes and all your cash goes in it. But I have categories in the budgeting app that I put the funds in. It's kind of like an envelope system. So then like if I had like a last minute dinner come up with someone, I can take funds from a different envelope and put it to that. It doesn't have to be strict unless your lifestyle.
Sure. It's just a
Anyway,
matter of
but
starting somewhere, paying
yeah,
attention, and understanding that hey, it's a process, and that
yeah,
every month looks a little bit different. But if you're not tracking it at all, things can totally go
yeah,
wonky. And through through the lens of home buying, when you see it, with home buyers that you work with, do you find this as a tool that you introduce or that you're encouraging people to do? Do you see those as separate passions? Is there overlap between what you do as a realtor
um,
and the budgeting piece?
no overlap at all.
No overlap.
Unfortunately.
Keep them separate.
So maybe that's
But
not a good question. But I
but
can.
through the lens of it, right, as
Well,
professionals
yeah.
in this industry, that like it's a very important piece. And a lot of times, I feel like home buyers will come to us and say, "We want to buy a home. We don't know how. We don't know where to start," and they just haven't even started with the smallest piece, which is structuring a budget and actually figuring out like how much we can save. It's haphazard. I think by the time they get to us, they're like, "Oh, we think we're ready now," but they really haven't done the work. Do you find that that's, I mean, you might not see it more on the real estate side, not necessarily on
Yeah.
the lending side, but
Usually
maybe
they're
with
coming to me
maybe with clients that
for
are like,
advice.
"Oh, well, we need to wait or we're going to save."
Yeah.
Like for those clients that you interact with that say, "We need to save," 100% you would agree they should start with budgeting.
Yeah. I would also say I feel like something that comes up a lot is people are like trying to figure out how much they can afford and maybe they do budget and they have their rent line and then they have their savings line and they're putting like $2,000 a month to their rent, but then they're saving $2,000 a month. And then your mortgage is going to be like 1,500 more than $2,000. And they're
Right.
like, "Well, I'm not going to be able to save and pay blah blah blah, pay my mortgage." And my thought process is always like, well, your mortgage is a savings account, kind of. I mean, I
Correct.
know in the beginning it's like mostly going to be interest, but if you're saving to buy a house, then your savings goal is going to switch to something else, and you're still going to get that money back as you're paying it into your mortgage. And
Correct.
that's something I try to remind people a lot too.
Yeah.
Um,
And
or you
one tip I like to give to home buyers is you can practice making your mortgage payment. So
yeah,
once you understand your budget and you're like, "Oh, we pay this in rent, but we understand mortgages, right? 2,000, same example, mortgage is going to be $3,500. So let's practice making our mortgage payment. So I think it's really important, especially as interest rates have changed, home prices have gone up, right? On the surface, it's not necessarily easier to buy a home. Still valuable, still one of the best ways to build wealth, for individuals in this country. But the monthly outflow feels different, right? It's a bigger responsibility to take on a mortgage. And so you're 100% correct in thinking that like your savings mindset needs to shift, but also as a great reminder that it's built in, right? It's automated savings because your home is building wealth for you while you pay down your principal. That's the saving piece, but it's also appreciating for you, which is kind of the twofold thing that people really need to understand. And I think, have you seen, this is a little off topic, have you seen all this stuff where people like regret buying a home? Have you seen this? Lately,
No,
it seems like even the
not
Bellingham,
really.
the Herald even just put one out that was like, home buyers regret buying a home because rates are never going to go down and their payment's too
I
high.
did see one article about
Yeah.
that, but I feel like our area is unique because we are still appreciating. I think there's definitely
Mm.
areas where people like did a 2-1 buy down and expected rates to come down in the 2 years and then they didn't and then they're also stuck
Yeah.
because their house hasn't appreciated. I
Sure.
think that I'm sure there are cases where someone overpaid a little bit and their house didn't really catch up in appreciation, but I do think that there are scenarios where people's house is appreciated here and so
Hmm.
um,
Yeah,
maybe it
and
just makes
thankfully,
sense
I mean,
to
the numbers are
refinance.
strong. Yeah, the numbers are strong nationally, but there's always, one-offs in different
Yeah.
markets. But I think when I see that, I think it's just like such a short-term perspective, and it's like a good
Hmm.
reminder that when you prepare for home buying and you start to really focus on your finances and build out your budget, understanding the transition into home ownership, a lot of that savings and a lot of that is really done for you and automated just through the process of owning an
Yeah.
appreciating asset. And it's a long-term perspective as well, right?
Yeah.
That in the short term you can kind of fix your finances with budgeting, and you should. I think everybody, regardless of whether or not buying a home in your future is a goal, right? Shore up your finances that way, but also understand, hey, our goal in owning a home, our goal in fixing our finances and budgeting and owning a home is that it is a long-term wealth building vehicle. It's not a quick,
Hmm.
answer in the short term. And so I don't know. I think my thought on that is I see these conversations now, and maybe it's just a media ploy where people are like, "Oh, they regret buying a home." I'm like, "Do you? Do you regret buying a home? Like, just
Right.
hang in there, like 6 more months." And I'm just like, maybe budget better. That's and this is where I'm getting at. I'm like, maybe just buckle down on budgeting. And I get it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's hard. It's hard out there, right? Things have
Yeah.
changed a lot. You go to the grocery store, and everybody, I just get mad, so I stop going. I was like $8 for a box of cereal. I'm like, come on.
It's rough out
But
there.
it just goes to prove, I think budgeting is more important, even more so now, right? In times
Hmm.
where maybe there's challenges and maybe it's a little bit harder to buy a home, maybe a lot harder. Maybe, where your money's going seems like you can't stop the outflow. I just think it's an even more important conversation now than maybe it has been when buying a home was maybe something easy or more accessible.
Yeah. Yeah, and
So let's see.
I was gonna say too,
Yeah, go for it.
I adopt I think about Dave Ramsey's principles a little bit too when it comes to budgeting. I know that I think he built his. I probably shouldn't say that. I just like some of the principles he has about,
Uh-huh.
build your emergency fund and then start paying. Or maybe I actually don't know what the orders of his things, but I know with YNAB too, it's like have an emergency fund of like $1,000 and then start paying down your debt and then build your 3 to 4 months savings or 6 months savings or whatever. I
Right.
do it that way. And another thing I really like that I've started to do is like my savings account, like all the dollars in there have a goal. It's not just like a lump sum of X amount of dollars. It's like $3,500 is for our new fence. $600 was for Christmas this December. $1,000 emergency
Yeah.
fund. And
Totally.
like
So it's
have a
not like an
goal for your
ambiguous
money.
pile of money. Every
Yeah.
every dollar has a purpose, which I think goes
Yeah.
back to maybe the foundation of budgeting. So that's a
Yeah.
great tip. So setting specific savings accounts with amount goals.
Yeah.
You
And I
probably
know
even
there's
name the
some.
account that way too.
Yeah,
like
I was gonna say
600.
there's some bank accounts that don't charge you money for like buckets, different accounts of bucket, different. They don't charge you money for different buckets within your account, maybe. So you can have the separate accounts for your goals,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great tip.
literally. So
Yeah, and then you're not just like ambiguous, like we're going to try and save as much money as possible, but actually setting specific goals, and then it's the same way
that makes it a
probably
little fun.
a little more fun. Yeah, and
Yeah.
which is a question I had, right? How do you make it feel less like a chore? Yeah, so
I
make
think
it
it just
fun.
will feel like a chore for some people. It's I again like why I like using the app because it's kind of like a game. You like the way it works for me is like every time we get paid, we have the lump sum and then we have to assign every dollar to its category. And so
Hmm.
that's I don't know, it's rhythmic. I just have a brain that operates a little easier with that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Caleb, my husband, hates doing it. So I think it has to do with personality, but I don't know. My categories have emojis and goals, and it feels good to like check off boxes of
good.
like funding
Yeah, that's
my
great. Make it fun.
appointment that's coming up or whatever.
Yeah, take the pain out of it, take the sting out of it, make it fun.
Yeah,
Understand there's freedom, in creating structure. So that's
it's
great.
the paying the bills that's not fun. The putting the money to pay the bills is more fun because it's still there.
Yeah, that's true. That's good. That's good. Let's see. What do you see, or what have you seen through your coaching as like a common mistake people make?
Common mistake. I think it just my comment about quitting cold turkey. I think it's just like you have habits that you're used to and they're not going to change immediately overnight. Like you have to gradually bring yourself like if you want to spend less money on clothes, gradually go backwards. Don't just go from all to nothing because you're just going to set yourself up for failure and then when you failed, then your mindset changes that you can't do it and then you feel unsuccessful and then it's like a whole rabbit hole
Mhm.
backwards. But
When
that's the
you,
only I don't think it's I feel like it's hard to make mistakes in budgeting. Like it is what you make of it.
yeah, that's good. So even, and I think that's great, great thought too. There's no, like, even if you totally blow your budget or something, right? Or even if
Yeah.
there's one month, it's like with anything, right? If you have a bad month, you just get back on track.
Yeah. Yeah. And things will come up and you have to shift and I don't know, find a
Just,
hobby to
yeah,
make money off of. Like I started
yeah.
pottery. Maybe one day I can sell it.
Whoa, there you go. What do you got? What's your specialty? Mugs?
I don't know. Yeah, because that's the only thing
Paperweights?
I can do successfully.
Toothpick holders?
Toothpick holders. Something like that.
That's awesome. I had one more question. Shoot, what was it? What? So,
Hmm.
would you say makes does budgeting make you feel like you have more money or less money?
I don't know. I feel like I don't know how to answer that. It's just like been my life for so many years.
Sure.
I think that when I don't budget, I feel out of control because I don't know what's going on in my bank account and if I have enough for. I mean, I 90% of the time am fine, but like I find when I don't know what's going on, I'm more stressed out than not.
Sure.
But I would say if you're able to budget successfully and like build your your categories up, which again is another YNAB thing, is
Hmm.
um, true expenses. They have a couple keywords, and that might be the wrong one, but I have like four line items: home maintenance, vehicle maintenance, medical, and vet bills of things that will come up at some point, and I put in $10 to $20 every paycheck into those categories so that when I need them, they're there. And I think
That's
if you
good.
do that in various places, you'll build up your funds over time and YNAB's other thing, and I think budgeting, what I've learned is budgeting helps you get out of debt and to be a successful spender outside of debt, but I find that people find it more valuable once they're trying to get out of debt, maybe a little bit less, maybe to stay out of debt, but going with that.
That's good.
But that's something I've learned a lot.
Yeah. And planning
Well,
for the future, right? And when you actually take the time to think through things, like you're saying, like vet bills, anybody who owns an animal knows that.
yeah,
But like planning for those things will help the entire process, right? You won't get
right.
so thrown off in certain months where you're like, oh, we have a $600 vet bill now that we
Yeah.
have to pay.
That's what I was going to say too, is YNAB's mantra is to get out of the paycheck to paycheck spending and be fully 1 month ahead of your paycheck. So like the money that you're spending today is from a month ago rather than your most recent paycheck. And so I think doing that over time has helped us definitely get to that position too.
I think the mindset that I find people in is they're worried, and kind of the basis behind my question is like, does budgeting make you feel like you have more or less money? I feel like the hesitation for people to budget is that they feel like they're going to realize it's going to be added pressure because they're going to feel like they won't have enough. But even if you start small and you can set aside $5, $10 a month, when you realize like, hey, we've got every dollar labeled and it turns out I've got $5, and then you can start to plan and prep for those things, those cycles of, unexpected expenses won't set you back. So that, like you're saying, that mindset of getting out of that rhythm of paycheck to paycheck instead of hoping that your money will make it to the end of the month, hoping that your card will swipe when you go to swipe it. You can completely avoid that just by really starting to focus on some of the small things. And I love what you said just about, kind of comes down to like giving yourself some grace. Like these are your habits. You're not going to fix it overnight. Not quitting cold turkey.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Cool. Any last thoughts for us? What's your biggest takeaway from budgeting as you sit and reflect on it?
I don't know. I just literally can't live life without it because I just need to know what's going on, and I just can't imagine not knowing what's going on, I guess. And
Right.
I
So
know
you actually
that
have less stress. You have more freedom
Yes.
because you have an understanding of what's happening.
Yes. Yep. And I'm preparing for, the next time the dog eats something they're not supposed to, and I'm going to the vet. There to pay
Right.
for it.
And as a homeowner, right? And is
Yeah.
for, our
My new fence that blows over every winter, like, it's been slowly waiting to do that, and that's going to happen in August. So
there you go. Then you're prepared
someone told
and you're
me,
ready.
maybe this is also helpful advice. Someone told me to, your home maintenance category should be 1% of the value of your home. Is typically what you're going to spend annually on maintaining your home.
Yeah.
So
That's
if
a good
you're
number.
about a house and you're trying to figure out how much to have sitting there for those things, that's a good gauge to go off of.
Yeah. From a monthly budgeting kind of practical standpoint too, you can take 10% of your payment. So if your payment's $3,500, setting $350 aside.
Yeah.
And for those planning to buy a house, understanding, hey, look, we want to build this in, because I think that's also maybe something that home buyers don't think through the home buying process. Is like, yes, we have the built-in savings part, making our payment, woohoo, homeownership, but also, hey, preparing for those things that will come. And so feeling like when you talk through those things and you start to build out your budget for home buying, is understanding like, hey, we have the ability to set X number of dollars aside. We usually say just 10% of your payment aside for unexpected things with the house too. So, but it's just all the things you're saying, right? You got to plan ahead, prepare, have a place to put it, and then actually follow through on it.
Yeah.
Smarter finances are a win for everybody.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Any last thoughts? You nailed it.
If you want to learn how to use YNAB, let me know.
There you go.
I'm happy to help. It's
Why
really
not?
fun for me. I don't know why. I feel like in another life I could have been an accountant or something, but yeah.
But those things, gamification, an app that makes it easy, I think it makes it accessible for a lot of people. And I think people just need the encouragement to actually do it. So here's their encouragement. Go do it.
Yeah. Go do it.